Equity is the maturity of equality. Equality means everybody gets the same thing.
Good luck.
Equity means you get what you need.
Hi, everyone. This is Christine Miles, your host of Shine a Light. I have the privilege today of being here with Dr. Lauran Starr. Quite a background you have, Lauran, including multiple doctorates, if I understand correctly. So, among other things, and that is impressive in and of itself, just from an education and a resume standpoint. But some of the very unusual and different things you've done, I also think are worth talking about today. So I'm looking forward to getting to know you and have my listeners get to know you. Let me do this appropriately and just talk about a little bit about what you do, and then we'll talk about all the other fun stuff. So Dr. Starr is a disruptive thought leader here to challenge the status quo, empower individuals, and ignite transformative change in everything you do. With bold leadership and fearless clarity, she reshapes how organizations approach inclusion, equity, and HR. Very important topic this nowadays, and I'd love to hear more about where you think this really fits with everything that's going on. And welcome. It's nice to have you here.
I am thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me. It's so funny when I listen to those titles, right? When I listen to the introduction, I'm like, yeah, like those aren't just words to me. I am a disruptor at heart, and it took me a while to embrace that side of myself, right? Because everybody's like, "Oh, be the good girl, like be the producer, and once I broke out of that shell, at the end of the day, who did I piss off, and did I disrupt the way business is being done?
And that's a hard concept for a lot of us, and I'm going to generalize particularly women. To piss people off. So define that for us a little bit. What do you mean?
Yeah. So I'm the thorn in the side, right? I'm the, in the lion's paw there, right? That thorn that you keep pushing and pushing. I like to think of that disruption, pissing people off is really more making people uncomfortable.
Okay. And what's the goal? So, because I think you're right. This is about purpose. This isn't about just upsetting people. This is this is challenging with a purpose, not just for the sake of being the irritant in the room. But so let's just, because it's so important, because I think conflict is an opportunity, isn't it?
Amen. I love conflict, providing that we're resolving it instead of managing it.
Yeah.
And I find all too often in organizations, they manage their conflict because nobody has disrupted them to see that there's truly a resolution.
Yeah. And that we can come out better to the other side. Conflict is tricky. I've done a lot of work myself around just helping people understand their own comfort with conflict. And what's interesting is that some people that you would perceive as the most comfortable because of the way they show up in the room are actually just as uncomfortable as the one who's quiet and sitting in the corner and not wanting to say anything because they don't like conflict. It's fascinating to see how it goes under the radar in terms of what we're really living with in terms of our conflict style, why it makes it tough to resolve.
I don't think anybody really goes, woo, conflict, jumping up and down. I want more of it, right? I don't like conflict in that lens. However, I do recognize that when there is conflict, there's an opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
Rather than going into reptile brain, right, and going with your dominant, are you a fighter or are you a flighter?
Yeah, yeah. It is the reframe. It is, but that's an important reframe around opportunity to grow. Opportunity to grow. So, all right, before we go deeper down that, let's go back before we go forward, because you, like I said, you quite a resume, but let's also talk about just kind of where your career started and where you are now, and we'll kind of work our way back to how all this thinking and change has really come to be and your passion.
Yeah, I love that. So I am the Chief People Officer for a nonprofit in Massachusetts. I run a people and culture department, not an HR department.
Why is that important to you? Yeah.
It's important to call that out because it's a different mindset. Human resources has a huge black eye right now. The data shows that 74% of employees have no idea who HR is until there's an issue. That's the wrong lens.
Yeah, that's like the police, right? I mean,
It is.
yeah, we know they're
It
there.
is.
We know they create order, and we need them, and we don't want just an emergency like that, right?
Yeah, and I have found in my years in human resources, people, and culture, that mindset is: are we focused on compliance? Are we focused on the administrative side?
Mm,
Or are we utilizing our talent to drive business outcomes? And that's the big divider, is that I utilize our talent, our people, to drive business results. My job is not to say no, it is to say, how can I help?
hmm.
And that's different from HR.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that also just the way we need to reframe HR? Are HR teams functioning that way and have been, and we give the lens of they're there just in the crisis, or which started first, the chicken or the egg, I guess is the
The chicken or
question.
the egg. If you look at HR, it's not surprising we're in this conundrum right now, and we are. If you're in HR and you're listening to this right now, I want to let you know that your job may go away.
Hmm.
And that should make you uncomfortable, if you are truly an HR professional, because business doesn't need HR, right?
Tell us
They
more.
really don't. Business, right? Compliance is compliance. Through automation, anything can check a box and make sure that we're staying on top of compliance.
Hmm.
Policies are now being written through AI,
Yeah.
agentic AI. So we really don't need as many people. Even job searches, we're finding, right? That talent acquisition specialist, we don't need 5. We can replace it with 1 thanks
Wow.
to automation. Now, that's HR.
Huh.
If you approach it from a people and culture lens, where we're talent engagement strategists, and you notice I said the word strategy, people and culture really wrap their arms around that strategic lens to provide outcomes. Right? We are data driven. The industry is complacent.
Because
We
it's
right. We started as personnel.
yeah.
And then we morphed into human resources because somebody, was like, well, we focus on humans, so we should call ourselves HR. And then nothing has happened. Even the governing bodies. Look at SHRM, Society of Human Resource Managers. That place is a crap show.
Wow. This is where you piss people off, right? Tell me more.
Right. I'm just going to call it like I see it. You've got, the head of SHRM who calls out and says, we don't want to have equity as part of DE&I. Well, if you don't have equity, you don't have inclusion. And if you don't have inclusion, you most certainly won't have diversity.
Yeah.
And that's not me. That's what the data shows. So for him to come out and misalign equity in the workplace just makes me scratch my head. They're also, 10 years behind. I just had someone that went through a SHRM training class, and she came out and she said, well, this is how we're doing employee relations. I'm like, that's how we did it 10 years ago. Let me show you how people and culture does it.
Okay. So this is a redesign of really what it is from, and it's from how we view it into the organization and how we reframe it in terms of the best practices as well.
Absolutely. And we have HR professionals, we're like airline stewardesses. We're the last ones to put on the oxygen mask when the plane is going down. We make sure everybody else has their mask on.
The helping.
We're the helpers,
Yeah.
but we're not strategic about it. And, CEOs right now are demanding, 92%, in fact, are demanding that their CHRO or their CPO is strategic in business alignment and driving the business. We're not a cost center.
Yeah.
And that's usually when I meet individuals, CEOs within an organization, and we talk about people and culture, HR, I always ask them, is your HR department, is it a cost center? And if it is, you're doing it wrong.
So before, again, I want to go back more about you, but how do you flip that from being a cost center to not being a cost center? What's the bridge to that? Help me understand.
Yeah, that's the real hard part. That's stepping into the space and really shifting the lenses to look at our talent and see where we can develop them and cross-train them and and move forward while we have the underpinning of policies.
Yeah. That's the foundation. That's still the foundation to some degree.
That's still the foundation. It's shifting from ownership to stewardship.
Interesting.
Right? HR doesn't own the policies. We right? Yeah. They never did.
Right.
People and culture, we steward those policies. We interpret the policies, but it's up to the managers to enforce them, not me. That's not my job. That's not in my scope.
But a lot of managers struggle because so many have been elevated, me included, back in the day, because we were good individual contributors, and not because because the way we get ahead is to move up. Even if people management isn't our first choice, we do it because that's how we move our careers up. So many of managers are in a position of not really having those skills and abilities and needing to learn on the job. Right.
And the ownership of those skills and abilities falls to the employee.
Yeah.
Right. They have to provide the motivation, right? The willingness to do the work.
Yeah.
And not be complacent. The organization is the structural foundation. We create the pathway. We create the content. That's not out of a can. We've become such a I think of every single HRIS system out there now has an LMS that can give you all these courses. Well, if you're not custom creating these, if you're not going in and cleaning them up, garbage in is garbage out.
Yeah. I was talking to a good friend of mine whose daughter works at a large pharmaceutical that we will remain nameless. And her mother my friend works there as well. And there's so much that you just navigating the sea of courses to figure out what's right for you is it's so massive. It's like you're looking for a goldfish in an ocean, right?
Yeah. You really are. It's horrible. And or I should say HR has gotten really complacent around that. Well, here you go. Here's the LMS. Go pick a course. When did development become solely the employee's responsibility? And when did we give up on developing our managers so that they can coach the next generation? Right? There's a lot that's gone wrong there. And I think a large part of that is because HR never upskilled.
Yeah.
Right. You say that, in the beginning, you were like, multiple PhDs and in my background and whatnot. I am a continuous learner.
Yeah.
I am always working on my development.
And you are a certified HR professional too, by the way.
Yeah.
You've got the highest level. So this is you looking at your own profession and saying, what do we need to change?
We need to blow it up.
Yeah.
We need to blow it up because we're not going to survive. The jobs report showed that jobs in HR were down 37% last year. And then the good news came out the beginning of January saying HR jobs are going to increase 6%. It means we're still 28% down.
Yeah, right.
And that number is going to continue to grow.
Because of this is the worry, right? This is the worry of AI is going to make jobs go away. But the reality is that's true in terms of if we keep the same and we don't innovate.
If we keep the same.
If we don't.
Yeah.
Help me, maybe I have this historically wrong, but when I hear the words human resource, which is so commonplace now, we're really, right?
I hate that term.
Well,
but yeah.
This is what I'm kind of getting. Isn't this a term out of the Industrial Revolution? I mean, in terms of it's kind of antiquated in how we're looking at people, right?
This is right. Human resources is 1980. Hello.
Yeah.
We're 2026 right now.
Yeah.
And we still have HR departments.
Yeah.
That function truly like an HR department. And it's going to bite organizations. They're already seeing it. Right, we're already seeing, heck, even looking at my own organization, jumping in there, the skills gaps were so glaring under their past CHRO that, sitting down, I was like, shame on this organization for allowing that CHRO to demoralize and stupefy this team that I'm inheriting.
Because of the behavior. This is where you call it like it is, which a lot of people are afraid to do these days.
Well, I think I think we're entering that next phase of clarity where people are becoming uncomfortable with disruption. It's
Mm-hmm.
all around us.
Yeah.
It's not just in the workplace, it's
Change
everywhere.
is hard.
Change is hard. However, when we take a look at that disruption, what's pairing up with that is the lack of critical thinking.
Yeah.
We have a problem. We have a huge problem.
Yeah.
We have students graduating college that don't have critical thinking or solid problem solving skills.
I heard I had a meeting this morning with someone, and she has an intern, and that intern didn't know how to place the stamp on the envelope or how to mail it.
Yeah.
This isn't,
I'm not surprised by that.
And I don't want to throw there's many a younger, newer generation that could run circles around me, and that's not a generalization. The world is just so different in how that some skills that are obvious are just not as obvious. This is the gap, right? And we have to close that gap because I grew up in the 70s, so we organized everything. I could probably have driven the car, gotten the gas, and paid for it, if I had to illegally. The level of sufficiency and efficiency is just different because of the way, the world's organized to a large extent too, and what we're focused on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we look at from that generational lens, we have 5 generations in the workplace.
Yeah.
And of the 5 generations, they don't want to get along with each other. It's very rare that you find a leader that can really work with all 5 generations, recognizing that, like the millennials, I can't tell you how many times I heard that they were spoiled, that they're looking for the next job jump, that they want to be promoted tomorrow. I think back to when I was that age, I wanted that too.
Of course.
So it's not a generational, it's a life stage, not generation, but we can just broad stroke that and say, we've got a whole generation of entitled employees. And I'm like, no. We have a whole generation of employees that want to be coached.
Yeah.
And we have a whole generation of managers that don't know how to coach.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's also not so different. They're just different how we express it. I want to challenge something you just said, because I want to dig into this, if that's so. You said they don't want to get along, and my perspective is we don't necessarily know how to get along because there's so many differences now. So I don't have a language necessarily. If I'm not a great coach, I don't know how to meet. So we do broad stroke. I agree with that. But what do you think? Is it don't want to or don't know how to?
It's both. If you want to get along with a millennial, with that generation in the workplace, you have to want to change.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to change, which is what we're seeing, right? I don't have the tools, I don't want to invest the time in learning those tools, then that tells me you don't want to get along with that generation, right? And I say that to my leaders where I'm like, that's a you problem. It's not a them problem.
Now you're talking behavior as a language.
Behavior, exactly. Okay. So we can either work on your behavior or you can get fired because you're going to have to get along with this entire multi-generational facet.
This is the challenging the status quo that we need. So let me just slow down. Let me see if I get you. So HR has been institutionalized in a certain way in organizations around compliance and oversight, rather than stewardship and filling gaps that drive business outcomes. And the decline of the departments is real now because of the processes that can be automated. And so it's a wake-up call, if we allow it to be, if we're in the HR field, to say, we've got to shift from this mindset and this approach to really being the ombudsman of change and of growth and of coaching and of upskilling so that we help our organizations thrive.
Absolutely.
That's a very optimistic way of looking at what my experience is that so many HR leaders would rather be doing.
Isn't that funny? Because my lens is there's so many HR leaders that are complacent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's no wonder, because imagine this, right? You've been an HR leader for 20 years.
Yeah.
And now you have someone coming in that has a degree in HR.
Yeah. It's a shame. We need
It's a
liberal
right,
arts. That's my
right,
bias.
but it becomes that breeding ground
Yeah.
of resentment.
Yeah.
You mean, how many times have I heard the, well, I've been in HR for 20 years. I'm like, I don't freaking care.
Yeah.
That doesn't, tenure does not equate to skill.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think, again, my experience is around how they want to help and how they want to make the difference. And so, again, the bridge is understanding what that shift can do and how exciting the work can really be when
Hmm.
you're, you know. But yeah, I mean, do I get that there's people that don't want to change? I mean, the joke, look, my field is psychology. That's my background. And the joke is, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb?
Right?
Just one, but they have to be willing to change it. So I'm with you.
Exactly. I'm right there with you. And that's the same thing with HR, right?
Yeah.
We all see the problems, but it's easier just to be checking the boxes. It is. It's easier to be checking the boxes than it is to be digging in
Yeah.
and ripping things apart. And, and the human race, the human psyche isn't built on problem solving.
Yeah. Well, not with this digital device either. We can think this can solve. This is where the
And it
AI.
can't. It can't. Even with AI out there, and I am a first adopter of artificial intelligence. I love it. It's taken away a lot of the minutia
Yeah.
and garbage that I used to have to do.
Yeah.
But garbage in
Garbage
is
out.
garbage out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I I just had a slide deck come across my desk that I kicked back, and I was like, "Well, it was great that Copilot created this for you, but this is garbage.
Yeah. We need
So
to
go
have that
back again."
but again, often this is
Yeah,
a skills gap too, isn't it? Because of
it's a skills
how we
gap.
use AI, how these are all the things. All right. So I have to go back now. Let's talk more
Okay.
about you. So take us back to, because look, I want to know if this woman that I'm talking with today, this is how you showed up from the time you were a little girl, where you're like, I don't care if I piss people off, or what that transformation came to and how it relates to what you're doing today. So take us back.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up? What were you like as a kid?
Yeah, so as a kid growing up, I was pretty scrappy. I grew up lower class.
Okay.
There was a time in my childhood where I lived in a tent.
Wait.
Um, yeah,
That's not everybody's story. What does that
right.
mean?
A lot of poverty there.
Oh, okay.
It's my siblings and I, we crack up and share stories of, peeing in a bucket and having it freeze before it hits the bottom because it's January in Tingsboro, Massachusetts, and we're in a tent.
And how old are you when you're living in a tent?
I was in 6th grade, so 5th and
Wow.
6th grade, so pretty young.
That's young. That's formative.
It's formative. And food, nutrition, right there, it wasn't there.
What were
It
your
wasn't
parents? What did your
there.
parents do?
My parents were bakers,
Interesting.
so they were middle class, lower class.
Yeah.
They were also alcoholics,
Hmm.
right? So there's a lot of trauma
Sure.
mixed in there. So when I say I was scrappy, I was pretty friggin' scrappy because I was like, this just, okay, this is not the life I want to lead.
Yeah. The uncertainty of it all. There was a lot of uncertainty.
But I had such a great imagination that I didn't realize that all other kids weren't living in tents.
Yeah.
It's like
your normal,
this.
right?
This was an adventure. This was just what it was, and you don't think about that when you're younger. When it came to college and paying for college, I had my dreams. I did the Broadway thing,
Well, let's slow
where
down. So you're growing up. How many siblings you have?
I have 5.
5. So there's a lot of you, a lot of
There's a
mouths
lot of
to
us.
feed, right?
A lot of mouths
Your
to feed.
parents aren't financially secure; they have their own issues. And how are you even doing in school? Like I'm imagining, like is school a refuge for you? Is it a place where you're warm and safe, and that's good, or what's
Yeah, right. School was warm,
Yeah.
which was good. Was it safe? Well, I guess so, because I started to build up this reputation that I would take you out if you pissed me off.
Okay. So you
right?
did show up that way as scrappy.
I did show up that scrappiness. I remember when I was in 6th grade, when we finally moved into a house, I used to sell gum out of my locker.
Huh.
So I'd buy a pack of gum for 50 cents, and then I'd sell a stick of gum for 25 cents. And that was my lunch money.
Wow. The survival, entrepreneurship.
A little bit of entrepreneurship, a little bit of survivalist in there, and that really carried through until I got into high school, and I found the world of theater where I could be anything I wanted to be. Was I a straight A student? Oh, hell no. I'm dyslexic.
Yeah,
I
likewise.
can't read anything.
Yeah,
Um, but my teachers were like, "You have such a great imagination."
yeah.
Like when we were reading out loud, which was like the bane of my
Oh, awful.
existence, uh,
Terrifying, wasn't it?
terrifying.
Yeah.
I would just make up the story based on what I heard beforehand, and 9 times out of 10, I was spot on.
Wow.
I mean, I wasn't reading, but I was ab-libbing.
Yeah, yeah. Creating.
And my English teacher, I'll never forget, my senior English teacher was like, "You are so good about reading the assignments beforehand so that you can elaborate."
Yeah,
I'm like, "I'm not reading anything, but
right.
yeah, that's it. That's what I'm doing."
Well, this is
Um,
that out of box kind of thinking, though, where we don't have to
mhm,
follow the same script like you're describing, right? It's amazing how it shows up early. I like to go here because I think my belief is that we all have this in us. We don't know our own
mhm,
story sometimes and what forms us and how we show up. And so when we disrupt that and we understand, it helps ignite something in how we show up in the workplace when we understand where some of this comes from, which is part of why I think it's
mhm.
so fascinating that now nobody's looking at your resume and your pedigree and going, well, she lived in a tent,
Exactly.
right?
Or you can't read.
Right. No, because you have multiple degrees, right? And
Mhm.
even being on Broadway that you didn't like to read out loud, then now you're a singer and doing all these different things. Like,
Singing
what
and
happened?
dictating, and one of the things that I found is that blue paper
Huh?
allows me to read easier.
Yeah. The ink shows up differently, doesn't it? Yeah.
The ink shows up
So relate to
differently.
that. Yeah.
So, I'm going to go do my Broadway thing. I'm going to audition. I'm going to have an agent because I'm a diva. I'm not doing chorus. I don't do chorus. Right. And right out of the gate at a reading, I get a script in blue paper and I
Wow.
can read this.
It's like right?
And I was like, holy
Yeah.
crap. Like,
Yeah.
I can read this and because I developed the ab-libbing side
Yeah.
that I could just quickly look at it and then just go with it.
Yeah.
So, I played Cinderella and Rodgers and Hammerstein's Revival. I played Eponine and Les Mis. I really played some
Well, you
great
also had
roles.
some talent, apparently.
I had some talent. We had a little bit of
I
talent
mean,
there. A
nobody, it
little bit
doesn't
of
matter how
talent.
creative I am. Nobody's asking me to sing on Broadway.
Right. And but again, I think, I look back at theater and that really was my saving grace in high school
Yeah.
because I could be anything and anyone that wasn't me,
Hmm. And what felt
and
good about that?
it was freeing.
Mm,
The trauma from my home life
yeah.
did not bleed into the stage, although I used some of that trauma in my roles.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
So, but it is a mindset, Christine, right? It is a mindset when I look at my siblings and whatnot. Um, my mindset was to survive.
Yeah.
Actually, my mindset was to
Well,
thrive.
that's what I was going to say. You did more than survive in
Yeah.
terms of this to overcome. So you graduate college, right?
Well, nope. I left Broadway and
Okay.
went into the Army
Okay, that makes
because I had to
sense.
pay for college, and I
Okay.
don't. Right.
Broadway to
So,
Army, that makes sense.
believe it or not, it was Bernadette Peters that told me I had a great voice,
Huh.
but I needed some grit. And she
Wow.
was like, "You should join the Army." And I did. I took her seriously.
And what
Uh-huh.
prompted that advice? Because this is
Uh,
interesting in terms of the advice we get in the workplace. So let's think this through.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's so funny because years later, I actually had my coach say to me, "Did you ever think that advice was removing the competition?"
Huh?
And I hadn't thought of it that way. Bernadette and I were up for the same role,
Hmm.
and she wanted to listen. And, me being just a stupid, a young kid, I was like, oh my God, she wants to hear me sing. Of course, come listen. And she was spot on in that she was much better in that role than I would have been. I was absolutely fine with that. She had a lot more maturity. Um, but she did say, yeah, she joined the Army. And at the time, China Beach was the television show
Huh.
that was like
I
my
remember that.
favorite. Remember
Yeah.
that?
You sure?
And McMurphy's saying was like, all this sand, all these men, no time.
Huh.
And I was like, well, then I'm just going to go join the Army. And there were things that were happening too. We had the stage actor, not excuse me, the Screen Actors Guild went on strike.
Okay.
So
Perfect
I met
storm.
John Travolta, I met Glenn Close. I'm going to auditions, and I'm like, this is a waste of my time.
Because you
And
felt like you were outmatched.
oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm horrible at waiting tables.
Yeah.
Horrible. I am not that people person. So it was like, what? Well, I'll go back to college, but I got to pay for it. Let me join the military. Went in to take the ASVAB, and it was on blue paper.
Huh.
And they were like, we'll give you a sign-on, but come in as a trauma medic.
Oh, wow.
So I did. I was
Wow.
like, why not?
Wow.
Why not?
Did they train you, I assume?
Oh, yes, they train us.
Here's the upskilling, because you were
Here's
not
that
you were not a
upskilling.
trauma medic walking into it.
No.
Okay.
I didn't. At that point there, I had done nothing but theater.
So they
there's no
they
skill.
saw aptitude.
They saw aptitude. And they said, geez, your scores are high enough to go medical corps, and we'd love to put you in as a trauma medic. And I said, well, you're offering me $15,000 to sign. Why not?
Okay.
Like, I'll take that money and put it
This is
towards
fascinating.
school.
So let's just take this moment. Is this part of what informs how you approach the people and culture today, that you didn't have this kind of skill or even this thought about it, and then they coached you to it, they trained you to it?
They trained me to it. There was no coach. There's no coaching in the military. You do it this way and have a nice day. However, I've wrapped my arms around that. I think that whole, at such a young age, anything is possible.
Anything's possible.
So they were like, we're going to train you. And then I went through basic, and I know you'll find this surprising. I could barely do one push-up. And by the time I was done with basic training, like, I could bang out 200 without thinking twice about it. I was dropped left and right because I didn't take it seriously. Like I wore nail polish. And they would scream at me about wearing nail polish. Like, they'd be like, Lynch, are you wearing nail polish? And I'm like, yes, drill sergeant, as long as it, complements the BDU, it's allowed. And complements is interpretation. Wow. So I think this looks great.
So you knew the policies then too.
Right. Well, we had to know that stuff, right? Sure. And fortunately, my battle buddy and I, we traded off. I helped her in the areas she needed help with, and then she read the policy books and tested me on policies. So, yeah. So I had that support. I was very creative at finding who's going to help me succeed. And then going through medical training, at the second week of advanced training, they were like, do you want to be a trauma medic instead of an EMT? And at that point, they had no women in the program.
Wow, you must have seen some stuff.
And I said, why not? Like, I'm good at this. I'm in great shape. I can do anything. And I served in the first Gulf War.
Wow.
And it was amazing. I latched onto strategy and constantly asking the why. And I think from a military lens, the saving grace is, regardless of your rank, if you're in the medical corps, you outrank everybody.
Because you're there for such a clear purpose.
Yeah. So I was known for shutting down sites, and if it wasn't safe, and I'd have I'd have a colonel standing in front of me screaming at me to let a soldier go back and fire, even though he needed sutures, and I was like, back off. I make the policy. I make the rules. And if you want to challenge that, let's do it.
Where did you get the fearlessness?
I think that's just from surviving my childhood.
So how did you get into this work where you become, you have a postdoctorate in Cornell, right? In law, right? So there's a lot of layers to the learning curve you have. But how did you funnel into HR, and what was interesting to you? And now what's chief people and culture? But
chief people and culture, when I got out of the military, I spent a significant amount of time in pharmaceutical sales as a sales rep, and climbed there. Very boring job. But I could sell. I learned I was constantly learning, read. And then I had my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years after I had my son, I actually had my daughters. And then I was like, well, do I go back to work or stay home? And the workplace didn't want me.
Hmm. Not as a
You know,
pharmaceutical rep anyway, right?
they didn't want me as anything.
Hmm.
Like going back into the workplace after taking some gap years, which I did, I took 5 gap years. They were like, "You're no longer qualified."
Hmm.
And what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I did land one position where the management was so toxic and so horrific. I was like, this is ridiculous. I need to fix this.
Hmm.
So that's what kind of pushed me more towards human resources.
Okay. Seeing what was wrong and wanting to help make it right.
Is seeing what was wrong and fixing it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's not about wanting to make it right. It's about fixing it.
Hmm.
And there's a very different lens there. There's a lot of people that want to make things right. It's the, put up or shut up.
Mm-hmm.
You either fix it or you don't. You get out of my way. And that was kind of, my foray really into human resources, where I was a bull in a china shop. And I didn't care because I had the education behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the skills. And right, I got my master's. Then I went after my PhD. So I had a little bit more understanding of industrial organizational psychology.
Yeah.
What are our people going through? And from a business lens, I'm very fortunate that I have a very strong business background thanks to pharmaceutical sales. But I'm like, this is transformational. It's not transactional.
Yeah.
But yet we're still operating from a transactional lens. So we need to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of is the foray into, chief people officer.
Yeah.
I am there to take care of my people. My team would say it, I am the mama bear. You don't mess with my team.
Well, this is this is my observation, is that when the words that you're using, like bull in a china shop, I don't care if I piss people off, this can feel very strong, right? And very polarizing. But what I hear is that what you don't care if you piss off is that the change is necessary.
The change
Not
is
the people, because
necessary.
my sense of you is that you're highly empathetic.
I'm very empathetic,
Well,
right?
I don't want that to get lost. I think that's important, because I think that when we hear these can feel scary to people when if what we're challenging isn't the person, or well, maybe we are at times, but I mean, you're really going, I see the problem, let's fix it. And that's how we help the greater, that's the most empathetic thing we can do. Let's cut through the nonsense instead of tolerating the toxicity.
And that's the maturity of into the role, right?
Yeah.
I had to learn, I had to be willing to learn that it's not always my way or the highway.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to put together business cases. Like if I'm going to do a change, I'm going to present a business case, the why, here's the problem statement, backing it up with evidence. I had to learn to communicate.
Yeah.
Because the way we communicate in the military is very different than in real life.
Well, and if you're a kid who could improvise and skip those steps, it's easy to go into adulthood and skip those steps, right?
It's
and
so
you
easy.
almost have to reverse engineer it to prove the case, right?
I'm reverse engineering it to prove the case until I built those skills up.
Yeah.
And even today, people would say to me, what are you working on my team? I'm all about developing my team. And they're like, well, what are you working on? I'm like, communication.
Yeah.
Because no matter how good you are, you can get better. Active listening. Looking at a problem 5,000 feet and then honing in, and recognizing that you are not the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
There is humility that has to be there
to be successful. Well, here's what's important, I think, too, is that's a skills gap, right? That's a bridge.
Huge skills gap.
We can have the best ideas, and if we're not able to communicate them effectively, but we know this now. We know these are learnable skills. We know that the brain is flexible. We just need that willingness to learn. So you might be the one listening that's like, I'm a bull in the china shop. I know that's who I am. And how do I bridge that gap?
Exactly.
That's the point.
Exactly. I'm a bull in the china shop. I'm going to call it out like I see it, but I do it tactfully.
Yeah.
I do it with emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've spent, when you can't read, you work on interpersonal skills.
Yeah. Trust me. Yeah. Yeah.
When you can't read, you look at behavior, behavior modification, you look at, behavior regulation. I've been doing that my whole life since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that's what it was called.
Sure. We didn't
Right?
have language for it. Yeah.
And communication so that I could get what I want without being manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
And really leaning into the lens of transparency and accountability. Look, when I fall down, I own it. I have no problem falling on my sword because I was surrounded by leaders in the military that did that.
Yeah. You're in some tough situations.
There are some tough situations where you're making a decision on a dime and it's going to go one way or another. A patient's going to live or they're going to die.
Yeah.
And I have to be accountable for that. Mm-hmm. And there's not a moment to second guess yourself.
And this is where what we want to bring into how managers lead, right? And how we want to help our employees by having that level of accountability for ourselves as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that transparency and the safety where employees, I tell my team all the time, you're going to make mistakes. I love developing my people through stretch assignments.
Failure is just such a misunderstood thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It is so.
I wouldn't be here if I couldn't fail because I fail every day. But I learn from it.
But there's so much, and again, this is culture versus compliance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that when we allow for failure and we allow for people to make mistakes, it's painful. And we learn some of the best things from it, right?
We really do.
But there's a lot of fear around making mistakes because think about come to my office with solutions, not problems. Come to my with answers, not questions. I think we're missing the point quite a bit. I want to make sure before we're done today, two things. One, you mentioned at the opening about this idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is obviously on the landscape, very hot,
mm-hmm.
and how it's so talk a little bit about where you think we are with that and how we should navigate.
Yeah. DE&I is such a crap show right now. And your listeners, if they know me, are giggling probably because I haven't dropped the F-bomb and I haven't sworn once yet.
Likewise, trust me.
Right. So if you've been following me, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. How did she not say fucking A yet?
Exactly. Great. So it's a shit show.
Yeah.
And there's some accountability that we need to recognize as business leaders and practitioners. We need to recognize that diversity is a shit show because we made it that way.
Mm-hmm.
We really did. We had departments that were, companies that were jumping up and saying, we need a DE&I department. Rather than hiring for skill, let's hire for representation.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not all people of color want to work in DE&I.
Right.
Right?
Why would that be?
I'm like, really?
Yeah.
But yet organizations were putting people in these DE&I positions that didn't have the skill set around influence, around understanding, around what they had was lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't lead a company on lived experience.
Yeah.
So, that's what kind of got us in the hot water. And then we had a presidential.
Isn't that because and I want you to finish, but isn't that because so much of this is misunderstood by the people that we're hiring?
It's so misunderstood.
Yeah. I was 30 years old when I started doing diversity training, 28 years old. And I was up there going, I am a fraud because I don't think I know enough about this because early on, the topic of diversity came down to just color, and that's not what this is about.
That's not what this is about, right?
It's
when
not.
You focus in on one affinity,
that's right.
Then we're talking about representation.
That's right.
And representation is not diversity.
That's right. It's there's diversity of a lot of things, right?
And it's so funny because when I started down the DE&I pathway, I was shocked how many times color came in. Like they're like, well, what would you know as a white woman? I'm like, I'm a veteran. I have
Right.
2 disabilities. I'm a woman. Like, and I have a learning disorder.
Yeah. Well,
How much more do you want here? Here's the hat trick. Do you want me to get a heavier spray tan? Would that make you feel better? Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
here's what I did this is what I figured out when I was 30. When I started to understand primary and secondary dimensions of diversity, instead of going out and introducing myself and telling people who I was, I'd ask them to guess what my primary and secondary dimensions
Yep.
were. And people would say that I was from Connecticut or the South, that I was married with 2 children, that I was
Mm-hmm.
Catholic, that I came from upper middle class. And by the way, I could
Yeah.
be with Hispanic people, like working at a mushroom farm, to CEOs, and the guesses were the same. And I thought, we look at what's on the surface, and
Mm-hmm.
our brains do that. We sort, and that's okay.
We do.
It's the questions we ask after that. And so
Yeah.
this is what, where we are. So step one, we got in this pickle largely because we tried to assign this around the wrong, what it meant to be in a diverse.
Well, were we, I say we get in this pickle because we focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah. And no
You
wonder
can have an
people of
extremely
color are
diverse,
annoyed.
right? Well, we can have the most diverse organization. I worked
Yeah.
for one that was extremely diverse, and I'm like, y'all are a shit show.
Yeah.
You have no inclusion and you have no equity, and you
Mm.
have to have those two first and foremost.
Mm.
You absolutely, and I'm not talking about equality.
Yeah.
I'm talking about equity. They are not the same thing.
Define it.
Equity is the maturity of equality. Equality means everybody gets the same thing.
Good luck.
Equity means you get what you need.
Mm.
So I grew up in a school system where equality was the first lens, right? We're going to teach everyone how to read.
Yeah.
Everybody has the Dick, Jane, and Sally readers.
Yeah.
I have a learning disability. I can't read. Nobody stepped in and said, well, you can't read, so let's figure out why.
That's
so
equity. That's equity.
Right, that's equity. That's when, the workforce, we say, oh, where are you struggling? Where? And it is a reframe, right?
Yeah.
What do you need to thrive in this position? That's equity. Because if you're thriving in that position, then opportunities will open up.
Mm-hmm.
We don't look at it that way.
This is so important because I think that's a lot easier for people to get their arms around, because it doesn't feel like their own fairness is being stripped away, that I will be passed over because I'm not. It's what
yeah, and you unpolarize it by not talking about color.
Yeah.
Right?
It is about whether I'm Catholic, though.
Are you Catholic? Right?
No, I'm just kidding, because they always guess me to be Catholic.
That's
which
awesome.
I'm not, but it's fascinating, though. I mean, look, I need to have you back because there's so much more to talk about, and you have such a colorful, no pun intended, their background in terms of all the different experiences that you bring, from your childhood experiences to your many different work experiences, and the lens that you are really trying and are disrupting the industry. Mm-hmm. I want to mention that you have many books that are already very successful, but you have a new book coming out. So let's plug that. I want people to find this. This is coming out very soon, probably by the time this podcast is launched. So mention that, please.
Yeah. So, I'm a fixer. I'm a doer. And when 47 got elected, I noticed a huge gap in American culture. And whatever happens in culture outside trickles into an organization inside, hence DE&I.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the perfect, I'm like, okay, right? We've polarized a nation based on color. Shocker. So in my response to 47 getting in, I might have gone a little manic.
You own that.
I'll own that.
You know that you piss people off. You know that about yourself.
I know that about myself. And through that, I had so many other plans I was going to do, but this book came to light. And I won't share what the first title was. Hell with it. So the first title was The Middle-Aged White Man Hissy Fit.
Oh, okay.
Right, I know, right? I went right at it. That's the Lauran disruption. But I wanted to expose the gaps in our culture.
Mm.
And as I was doing a deep dive, I'm a researcher by heart, I learned that there weren't frameworks in place for our cultural normity, right? We could talk about Hofstede and national, whatever have you, like that's one thing. Um, but for an actual thriving culture, what does that look like? So I did a study and created the parameters around that based on evidence. So
I think
it's
this
just
is
not,
important. This isn't just your opinion. Just tell us
no.
what the title is before you tell us the rest of it, so that, because I want people to hear what you're trying to solve here. Yeah.
Yeah. So the title of the book is See Dick Throw a Hissy Fit:
Mm.
The Rise and Predictable Fall of U.S. Culture.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting as I was tearing it apart, we're not the first culture to fall apart. The Roman culture, look at previous culture, and it's the same story.
Sure.
It's the
History
same
repeats
story,
itself.
history repeating itself because they refuse to see history for what history is. You can't whitewash history.
Yeah.
It happened.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and is 47, I refuse to use his name, is 47 at fault? No, he's just another symptom.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to stop that polarization lens, where we look at all the factors that come into play. And I tell you, Christine, when I say manic, it was like I kept pulling strings to find more strings. When it came to the actual titling, I went to bed one night really upset because I was like, this title, the original title's
Yeah.
not floating. It's not,
Yeah.
and I can understand that. Like
Yeah,
I
because
had,
it's polarizing in and of
it's
itself.
polarizing. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
polarizing, and that's the last thing I want to do is
Sure.
polarize.
Well, sometimes we
Uh,
have to start what we're trying, what we fear
I
we
have to
create,
start
right?
and hear what people are saying, and
Yeah.
the feedback I got from my groups, my beta groups, was phenomenal,
Yeah.
phenomenal, because it really shaped the book. I went to bed, and I woke up the next day, and I was like, the Dick and Jane readers.
Yeah. That's right.
Let's do a deep dive, only to uncover that this was the cultural architect of middle class white people.
Well, if I'm going back a long time, but I remember in my early diversity that in work, that in, and this may not totally fact out, but because I'm going back 3 decades,
Hmm.
but that in 1969,
Yep.
that the average worker was a 29-year-old white male.
Yes.
So that's the construct. That's not their fault. That's just what
That's the
was.
construct. Because if you were a person of color, you couldn't get a bank account.
Yeah.
You couldn't get, right? You were paid unfairly. You couldn't own a home. There's redlining. There's so much that goes in. And then when you start looking at the actual cultural architect, Leave It to Beaver. Father knows
Sure,
best.
sure.
This book just wrote itself based on evidence.
Well, let me just give one other thought about this, because I was a field hockey player, among other athlete sports, but I was the first generation, not Title IX. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so my coaches were pre-Title IX, and an athlete prior to Title IX, you had 3 or 4 sports you could play, and that was it. Period.
Yeah.
So as a field hockey player, I ultimately married him, but I needed somebody to practice with. I met my ex-husband when I was 16. I said, practice field hockey with me. And then I wanted him to play with me. And
Mm-hmm.
some of the women that were pre-Title IX said, you can't put him on the field. It's taking a spot away from the women. And but I understood,
Yep.
this is the same problem, different lens, right?
Different lens.
So,
Yeah.
and I said, because you experience not having a place to play, I could empathize and understand, but I said, but we need the sport to take off. And the only way field hockey is going to get the same recognition in the States as it does internationally is if men play the sport.
Yeah.
So, but it's so easy to go myopic when our experiences are what's shaping that. So this is where I think the research and the strings that you're pulling are so important to understand. How did we get here, so that we
How
know
did
how to
we
do
get
better,
here?
right?
How did we get here? Yeah, so important, so
Yeah.
important. And I think it's not just where we are as a culture. I think it's where we are as an individual.
Yeah.
We're so polarized as a country. I sit back and I go, let's start pulling the strings to uncover what caused that polarization.
Yeah. Well, this is
Well,
what I want to say about you. One, you say some very, very bold things,
I do.
which I
I live
appreciate,
by them.
and you live by them, and there's a lot of work under those bold statements. So don't stop at the bold statement.
Hmm.
Go beyond the bold, listen to the
Go
bold
beyond.
statement and go beyond and understand what all this means, because you'll be better for it. So
Absolutely.
yeah, for you personally, and for all the things you're representing, things you're igniting to change and to really inspire people to take a harder look at the norms, so that we can challenge them and 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 innovate. So it's
Hmm.
just such a pleasure to have you
Same.
on and to talk with you. Tell us the name of your book coming out again, please.
Oh, see Dick throw a hissy fit. The rise and predictable fall of U.S. culture.
So wonderful. Well, you'll be able to find that. It's coming out. Soft launch now, coming out
Hard
February.
launch will be mid-February, but soft launch is happening right now. So you
Super.
can find the book. It's out there.
And where can they
It is
find
out there.
you and the book, Dr.
So
Lauran
you can
Starr?
find me simple, easy, right? Dr. Lauran Starr. I'm the only one out there. So that'll pull my website up right away. And as far as the book goes, you can either go through Ingram Spark, where you'll get a discounted price because we're in soft launch, or you can find it on Amazon. You can find it at Barnes and Noble. It's starting to be placed all over the place right now.
I'm sure it's going to do very well. And like a good dyslexic, then I worry that I've been saying Lauren, but Lauran is the proper.
Yeah, don't even worry about it. I
Well,
don't even notice it.
well, that's my apologies. That's my dyslexia coming right through. So
Right
I'm
there
glad
with you.
so thank you for your understanding.
Sure.
And it's a pleasure to meet you and know you. So thank you everyone for listening. I'm sure you enjoyed this as much as I did, and we'll see you next time on Shine a Light.